Welcome to Campfire Wisdom. Grab a seat around the fire and tell us your story.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Campfire Wisdom. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I want to talk with you a little bit about some of the madness that's going on around here. And when I say around here, I mean Southern California, and specifically all these wildfires. So I know some of you may not really have a sense of, why does California burn all the time? I know everybody hears that term Santa Ana winds and just thinks about, it gets windy, but obviously all of us know wind fuels fires, and yeah, it's been a really big problem, and we're starting to see the effects of it. And obviously you feel just powerless as someone who enjoys being outdoors and nature and all that stuff. You're wondering, damn, what can I do? You see the fire off the freeway, or you see the smoke burning from a distance, and it's just a really sad feeling because there's not much you can do. There are a lot of good organizations out there doing stuff right now because of the wildfires, and I'll put that up on the show notes this week where you can make donations. There's all kinds of different places. I'm going to rattle off a few. Obviously, GoFundMe has set up some things. Humane Society, there's a lot of animals affected, both domestic and non-domestic, but Campfire, which does a great job as far as protecting the forest, the U.S. Forest Service as well. I think something that we don't think about is, yes, there's a lot of damage out here, but there's definitely devastation. How are people going to rebuild? All that kind of stuff. Well, not trying to sound cruel or anything, but hopefully most people are covered by insurance. If you buy a house, you buy your stuff, you're going to have some kind of insurance on it, especially if you got a loan. So hopefully that's the case. If not, that's where people can kind of chip in. But there's other things going on too. It's like, how can you rebuild what has been destroyed? Sad to say, it's hard for the native vegetation to bounce back, because what happens is there's this corridor in the mountain ranges. So there's huge groups of mountain ranges. You've got the San Gabriel's, the Santa Monica's mountains, and the San Bernardino mountains. And even off the coast, the Channel Islands are kind of part of this group that funnels air east and west. And that's basically where the Santa Ana winds come from. They just come down those areas. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying it, but and that creates this perfect environment for fires to take place. Supposedly, it's kind of interesting, but the Santa Ana winds originated from this canyon called I pulled it up here. I'm actually using my computer, I know. Jeez, why are you using this? But according to the etymology of the Santa Ana winds, it's supposed to have come from Santa Ana Canyon outside of Orange County. But anyways, those mountains create this vacuum of air that just flows. It draws the hot air out to the coast. And that's why it's unusually warm this time of year. Obviously, if there's an ignition source, we got a serious problem, and the problem is wildfires. So with the population increase here in California that's just going through the roof, all the native vegetation doesn't have a chance to bounce back. What ends up growing in its place is like weeds and brush and the stuff that just ignites every year and just burns every year. So there's definitely something to consider there. I am going to post some information on the Forest Service, because I think something that's critical right now is Campfire and the Forest Service are the ones that protect the forest and try to prevent it from burning, and try to have reseeding programs where, plant a tree. We've all heard of that. So that's something to think about too. Yes, it is a tragedy. It sucks. Let's help our fellow man. But at the same time, let's also rebuild what has been lost. Maybe that's another way, another preventative measure we can take. Another thing you might consider, which is something pretty cool and new. I haven't done this before, but my girlfriend and I actually bought a live tree. It's a pine tree, it's like a baby pine. It's live, and I think when we're done with it, we're going to plant it. So obviously I'm going to check where I can legally do so, but maybe it's a way to get around cutting down more trees. And not trying to sound too hippy dippy, but yeah, if all of us maybe did that, it would probably help out. But let's be honest, there is something nice about having a Christmas tree, and a big Christmas tree, but we're going modest this year in lieu of what's going on with the fire. So I thought it was kind of cool, and it made me feel good. And yeah, if that rings true for you, run with it. So like I was saying earlier, just a lot of madness going on. The people, I don't know, there's like this sense of people suffering with the fires. And it's more so than just losing wilderness and losing all that kind of stuff, but people are losing their homes. People are, suffering in some ways. A friend of mine who, I'll be honest, someone I didn't really know all too well, but touched my life nonetheless. And this is going to sound maybe a little cheesy, but I was working for a company, and the security guard there just was very loyal. He always felt like he obviously he worked for a third-party security company, but he took his job seriously. He protected people at the store, and there were times where he really stuck his neck out for us and for the staff. And he was an older guy, a southern guy, and you couldn't always understand what he was saying, but he always came from a place of love and support. And we lost him the other night. So he was in his late 60s, diagnosed with cancer, and just you wouldn't think. I mean, he wasn't the healthiest guy. He smoked and all that kind of stuff, but he was a spitfire. There was one time where this dude was giving all of us a hard time in the store and threatened us and got violent. And this at the time he was 63 years old, he like body slammed this dude. And again, I'm not advocating violence in this case, but he stood up and protected a couple employees who were being threatened by this guy. He had something in his bag. He never got a chance to get it out because he slammed him. But I went to the hospital to visit him the other day, and he wasn't doing good. He was, on a breather and gasping for air. And all I can say is, fuck cancer. Cancer is the worst. Shout out to you, Robert. You will be missed, and you will be remembered. And thanks for always having our back. Peace out, homie. I'm not telling you all this stuff to bring you down, but I'm just thinking that, this kind of energy's in the air, and I think being conscious of it, especially this time of year, is important, because it'll make all those moments more special when we're spending them with our friends and family, or getting outside, or being thankful for where we might be at, and maybe reaching into your pockets if you can and try to help someone in need, because there's a lot of people out there, and some of them might be victims of the fire. Some of them might be the forest itself. Maybe it's the animals who need to have more trees to make a home in themselves. But I do have to say that there are good things that are abounding in the universe at the same time. So we're going to flip this conversation on its end a little bit and talk about something I really enjoy talking about, which I probably haven't really exposed here, but I'm a huge Green Bay Packers fan. And today we averted a crisis of our own. We almost lost to the Cleveland Browns. So if any of you are football fans out there, you may know that the Packers have suffered an incredible loss this season when Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone. Our season took a major shit, and we are only now on basically the verge of having a slim chance And then when I say slim, I mean the slimmest margin to making the playoffs. So today we kept that hope alive when Brett Hundley made this fantastic game-ending throw to Devontae Adams and won the game. So there is some hope. I was actually listening to it old school style on my phone, and yeah, it was fun. It was good. So anytime there's a moment of reflection like that, when things are going kind of, like I said, madness in the universe, there's always some positive thing that comes out of it. So I don't want to be a downer, that's not my style. I tend to be the optimistic type person. I know I've talked about it before, is sometimes being optimistic, I've reflected on that, but I definitely like being in that position. So yeah, if any of you guys are football fans, let me know your teams. I'd love to hear from you. And by the way, my offer of the sleeping bag to the first person who emails me, who I do not know, who is not a friend, not an acquaintance, is not vested in, I guess, or at least knows about this. I want to try to reach a new audience. I want to reach people who are maybe checking me out for the first time, checking out what we're trying to do here, checking out the whole story. And yeah, I will get you a nice sleeping bag. I'm not going to get you a $30 one from Target or Costco, but I'll get you one you can write home about and take on a legit camping trip and be warm and toasty. So send me an email. It'll be in the show notes, but it's also campfirewisdom@gmail.com. I was thinking maybe we could try to appeal to the gods tonight. What do you think? Give it a shot? One of my favorite legends is the Man in the Maze, and we'll talk more about that later on, but the Man in the Maze it exists in many Native American tribes as different stories, but it's particularly recognized as like a Hopi legend. But obviously it's the person who's trying to find his way in this world. So life being, of course, the quintessential maze. But I thought tonight we could talk about wind and the Hopi legend of the origin of wind. If you guys don't mind, I'm just going to read this to you, and at the end maybe we can make a little invocation and ask for a little bit of reprieve from the Santa Ana winds. Okay? So this is from Voices of the Winds, and it's basically a collection of like Native American legends. The wind god from the Hopi tribe. Long, long ago, the Hopis were greatly troubled by the wind. It blew and blew and blew all the time. The Hopis planted their crops, but before the seeds could begin to sprout, the wind blew the soil and seeds away. Unhappy and worried, all the people made prayer offerings of many kinds, but they accomplished nothing. The old men held councils in their kivas. They smoked their pipes prayerfully and asked one another, "Why do the gods turn such strong winds upon us?" After a while, they decided to ask for help from the little fellows, who were the two little war gods, 2 of the 5 grandsons of Spider-Woman. "Why did you ask us to come?" was their first question. "We need your help," answered the old men. "Something must be done to the wind." "We will see what we can do for you," said the little fellows. "You stay here and make many more prayer offerings." The Hopis make many kinds of prayer offerings, as many as there are prayers, and there are prayers for every occasion in life and death. They are reverently fashioned of various types of feathers, carved and painted sticks, and hand-spun cotton yarn. The little fellows went first to their wise old grandmother, Spider-Woman. They asked her to make some sweet cornmeal mush for them to take along on a journey. Of course they knew who the wind god was, and knew that he lived over near Sunset Mountain in the big crack of the Black Rock. When Spider-Woman had the cornmeal mush ready, the little fellows came back to the kiva where the men were holding their council. The prayer offerings were ready, and also the ball that the little fellows liked to take with them wherever they went. They liked to play catch with it. The men made bows and arrows for them to take on their journey, which seemed much like going on a war party. The arrows were tipped with bluebird feathers, thought to be more powerful than any kind of feather. The two little fellows started toward the San Francisco peaks. The old men went along until they reached the little Colorado River, and there they sat down and smoked their pipes. The smoking of tobacco among the Hopis, as among many other tribes, is strictly ceremonial. The sacred smoke carried the prayers of the Hopis to their gods. Continuing their journey, the two little fellows played catch-ball from time to time. On the fourth day, they reached the home of the wind god, who lived at the foot of Sunset Crater, in a big crack in the black rock. There he breathed through the crack, as he does to this day. The little fellows threw the prayer offerings into the crack and hastily put their old grandmother's sticky cornmeal mush into and over the crack, and thus sealed the wind god's door. He became very angry, so angry that he blew and blew and blew, but he could not get out. The little fellows laughed and laughed, and then went home, feeling very proud of themselves and of what they had done. But after a while, the people in the villages began to feel very hot. Every day the weather became hotter and hotter. People came out of their homes and stood on house steps to look toward the San Francisco peaks to see if any clouds were coming their way. But they did not even see a wisp of a cloud, and they seemed not to feel the breath of air. They thought they would suffocate. "We must do something right away," everyone said or thought. So the men made some more prayer offerings and called the two little fellows again. "Please, please go back to the house of the wind god at once, and tell him that there must be peace among us. Then give him these prayer offerings and let him out. This heat is much worse than the wind." The little fellows replied, "We will go and see what we can do to the wind god to make life more comfortable for you." After 4 days, they arrived at the house of Yaponcha, the house of the wind god. The little fellows decided that the wisest thing to do would be to let the wind god have a small hole open, just enough to let him breathe through, but not enough for him to come out of the crack in the black rock. So they took a little of the cornmeal mush out of the crack. Immediately, a nice cool breeze came out, and a small white cloud appeared. It floated over across the desert towards the Hopi villages. When the little fellows reached home, everyone was pleased. The Hopis have been grateful to the little fellows ever since. The winds have been perfect, just strong enough to keep the people happy, but not strong enough to blow everything away. Ever since then, every year, in the windy month of March, the chiefs and the high priests of the 3 villages of the second mesa give prayer offerings to the wind god, Yaponcha. So maybe what we could do tonight is send a message out to Yaponcha. And what I would say, Yaponcha, we're having some troubles here, buddy. The fire is only about 10% contained. There are evacuation orders for large parts of Santa Barbara County. And 230,000 acres have burned already. So I would ask Yaponcha to take it easy over the next couple of days. Give us a little bit of reprieve, and give us a chance to bounce back. I want to thank you guys for listening tonight. I know we reflected on some deep thoughts and whatnot, but I'm getting a lot out of it, and I hope you are too. If you have any feedback, you can reach me, campfirewisdom@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Campfire Wisdom is brought to you from the hills of Rancho, Cucamonga. We'd like to thank the men and women that protect our national parks and forests. You make this journey possible. Theme music by Sean Cromwell.